Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Frame and Sequence podcast. My name is Todd Rittendaro, and in this episode I sit down with Yolanda Edwards. Yolanda is the editor-in-chief of Yolo Journal, her gorgeous new travel magazine, which I highly recommend getting your hands on. She is also the creative director of W.M. Brown magazine, and she's the former creative director of Conde Naste Traveler. I first met Yolanda exactly a year ago today as I record this intro, but I've admired her work and her personal taste for a long time, so this episode was a real treat for me. She shares a lot of great stuff in this episode, among which is her experience in legacy publishing and what makes Yolo Journal a different kind of travel magazine. She shares some of her thoughts on what makes a good travel story and what makes compelling travel photography, and we get into much, much more. I was very inspired by my conversation with Yolanda, and I hope you enjoy. Well, hey, Yolanda, thank you for sitting down with me. I really appreciate this.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this has been a podcast a year in the making because I first met you a year ago in a chateau in Bordeaux, which was I don't get to say that I don't get to say that very often.
I don't either.
And what a difference a year makes. I think you were just telling me about your magazine at that party in the chateau, and last night was another launch event for Yolo Journal, which is incredible.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, a year ago, when I met you, it was literally the last day of my employment at Conde Nast. And it wasn't just like, oh, this is a bummer because I lost my job. It's like, no, this is a bummer because there will never be another job in legacy publishing again. Pretty sure about that. And so I was like, I feel like there will be something exciting, but I don't know. And I'm just going to have to fake it till I make it and pretend like everything's okay and I'm confident. But who knows? What if I have to move home? Like, I always get this, like, my go-to anxiety is like, I'll just be moving in with my parents. It's like, how can I be and at this stage of my life, and I'm still like, I have to move home. But I do have that. And and then last night we had a party for Matt's magazine and my magazine. So I love that.
Yeah, which is incredible.
It's
full circle.
amazing.
Yeah, and what a beautiful magazine it is. I mean, that first issue is stunning.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited for the rest. Yeah, there's so much I'd love to get into, if that's okay.
That's great.
So where is home for you originally, or where did you grow up?
Home now is Brooklyn. Home where I grew up for my first 10 years was Tacoma, Washington.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of I don't know, like, I think it's better now, but when I was growing up there, it was like a bit of an armpit. And my dad was a piano teacher. He still is a piano teacher, but he was teaching at Pacific Lutheran University, and my mom, she was a stay-at-home mom. So That's where I lived my first 10 years. Then we moved to the Bay Area. And I would say, like, I feel like I'm from the Bay Area because, like, I went to college there as well. So, yeah, I feel like that's where I'm from. But my roots are Tacoma.
Tacoma, cool. And did you travel a lot as a kid?
No, my parents were definitely super young when they had me and not of means. And so our travel consisted of, like, driving the I-5 from Tacoma down to Burlingame, where my dad's parents were. And if we were lucky, we didn't stay at my great aunt's house, which was kind of in the middle. And if we were lucky, I would be like, can we please stay at, like, one of those motels that has, like, the pool?
Right.
And so because we would drive down I-5 and you would just see, like, those pools that was, like, the only thing that would glow off the side of the highway. It was, like, that blue pool. And it just seemed, like, so cool. So, like, that was, like, the other.
Right.
And that was, like, and we did it a couple times. We'd stay and I would swim in the pool. And I remember it was, like, the only time I was ever allowed to have sugar drinks because we could go and, like, get, like, an old time lemonade out of the machine. And I was just fascinated by, like, ice machines and soda pop and swimming pools. And I don't know. It was just like, I didn't know about hotels. So for me, like, my travel, my kind of wanderlust starts from that.
Right.
Really, like, it's very basic. It's like from a interstate highway and then looking at, like, basically motels.
Right.
As, like, that's goals.
Right. It's funny. Some of my earliest travel things are associated with those things too, like that sound of the ice machine or the overly bleached white towels in like a motel.
Yeah.
Like that smell is like, to me, means
Totally.
vacation, which is such a weird association.
Right.
Did you always know you wanted to go into publishing, or what interested you about that
No,
field?
I mean, I think like when you don't grow up with parents or parents' friends, or like I wasn't surrounded by people that had jobs that seemed like they were interesting to me. Like I mean, my parents' friends were, I don't know, my parents are very involved in their church. And so I just sort of looked at them like they were churchgoers. I didn't really, my parents didn't identify people by what they did. So I just didn't grow up in that culture of like, oh, so-and-so is coming over, he does such and such and she does this and that. So I just didn't grow up like that. It's so the opposite of what our lives are like today, where people are so identified, like, Mary's coming over, she does X and he does Y. And so I think it, in a way, like I really had to find my way. There was no digital and social media. There was no way to find this other world. So I think I was just a huge seeker. So like when I got to high school, I made friends with some people whose parents were really, like one set of parents, my friend Tara McKinley, her dad was a watch collector.
Oh, wow.
Is a watch collector and a Jaguar collector. And he had, like, these people had a 3-car garage. And this, for me, like growing up in a duplex, I was like, 3-car garage? It's not shared. Like I was always, I don't know where it came from, but I always had this I feel like I've been this aspirational person since I was like 5. So I'm an OG climber. And so these people like taught me about travel and watches and cars and the finer things in life. And then I had this friend, Stephanie Schrader, who actually came to the party last night. Oh. And her parents were into food and also into Jaguars. So Jaguars like play this like formative part of my like youth was like, I need to have a Jag at some point.
Right.
Still don't have it. Will have
Still
it.
on the radar?
Yeah. But Stephanie's parents, like, they cooked out of the Silver Palette cookbook. I had never seen anybody cook out of a cookbook. And it was like dog-eared with like, I don't know if we had Post-its then, but it's in my head there were Post-its or bookmarks or dog ears or something. And it was greasy and splattered. And they talked about what will we eat tonight. And then they would cook what they wanted to eat. And it was like a conversation. And I was like, oh my God, this is like, I've never been around this. Like we just ate what was in the fridge, or I don't know. It just, my mom had things she made, but it wasn't like this big to do about it. And then they taught me about, like, probably the first meal I had in my life that felt like a big moment. We went up to go to have a taco at La Taqueria in San Francisco. Yeah. And they were like, okay, we're going to this place, and this is what we're ordering. And it's a taco carnitas, and then you get the cheese on top. I mean, when I think about it now, it's so, like, not authentic, but cheese on top. And guacamole, or it wasn't even guac, it was avocado chopped up. And it was like the best thing I ever tasted in my life. I still think it's like the best taco. Even if like a purist would say like, why would you put cheese or whatever? And then we walked outside and there was a protest going on and Jesse Jackson was there, and it was packed Mission Street, and the whole crowd was just saying, like arms raised, like, si se puede. And I was like, I feel so alive. Like, what is this? What is this world out here of like tacos and Jesse Jackson and si se puede? And I was like, I don't know. I think it was like the moment that changed my life.
Wow, that's interesting. So how did that change your perspective, or what did it?
I just think like it was like I had a feeling there was a life outside of my kind of provincial life in Burlingame, California. And then I saw it. It was like there are people that are not like me out there in the world, and I want to go be around those people.
And then is that what made you want to go to school in the Bay Area as well, being around that?
Well, no, I mean, the way I ended up staying in the Bay Area was because I wasn't a great student. I think that before I started traveling, I started like traveling in my head through like, well, I can dress the way I want to. And so I would like go to Salvation Army and find things like that seemed like the person I wanted to be. I think I had seen some movie or seen some visual of like a woman who wore like pencil skirts and, you know, like little, you know, stilettos. And what I had this kind of like I was going to be Maud.
Right.
And then I saved up my money. My dad taught me how to teach piano. So I taught piano to little kids in like the wealthy communities of Burlingame and Hillsborough and all of that area. And so I made money and I got a Vespa. And then my first car I got was a Citroen. So I was like this kind of Europhile from a young age. I also remember somehow I got introduced to, it was like a paper version of, like a newspaper version of women's wear. And I think they called it W. I remember it folded out like a huge newspaper, and I would turn the ads into posters on my wall. So my walls were like plastered with David Bowie and like Calvin Klein ads. And my dad would tell me to take the Calvin Klein ads down because they were too suggestive. It was like Bruce Weber shooting Josie, and she had like her like top button of her white jeans undone, and like the shirt was showing too much. And he was like, that needs to come down. And I'm like, why? It's everything. Yeah. But then, yeah, basically my first trip to go anywhere that was actually somewhere other than California and that drive, or California, Oregon, Washington, was I was invited by the McKinley family, and they said, well, why don't you come to Europe with us? So I said, great, I'll come meet you guys, because they were going to be on a cruise before I met up with them. And these people I taught piano to said, well, we have relatives in Paris, and you can go stay with them. And then from there, you can make your way down to go see your friends. So I had it all set up. I was meant to stay with these people. And then I get to Paris, and I've never experienced jet lag. So I get off this flight, and I don't know how to use the phone. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm completely clueless. I don't even, maybe I had an address. I don't know what, I don't know how it happened that I basically just got in a taxi and said, take me to a cheap hotel. And they brought me to a hotel that I've since looked up, and it's not there anymore. But it was a total dump. And I never hooked up with those people. I spent 5 days wandering around Paris, and then got on a train and went down to Brindisi, where I caught the ferry, and went to Athens and met up with my friends. Somehow, I don't even know how these things happen without cell phones, but somehow it did. I just don't, it's so perplexing to me. Like, did I send a wire? Like, I don't know what I did. It's so weird that it all worked out.
I know, that's so fun. How old were you for that trip?
I was 16.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I turned 17 on that trip.
What an incredible...
So I was a junior.
Incredible
and I
first
just
trip.
can't even believe that my parents let me do that. I'm like, thank God they were checked out and they didn't think about it. So.
And so did you just full on catch the travel bug at that point, or were you overwhelmed with the trip?
No, I was like, I need this to be my life.
This is it, yeah.
Yeah.
Very
From
cool.
then on, it was, and then the next year I ended up going back, and I was like, I said to my same friend who I went with, let's rent an apartment in Mykonos, because I loved Mykonos. This is 1986. Mykonos was so cool then. It's not the Mykonos today. Like, I don't think I could ever go to Mykonos today.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, no disrespect to people who love it. It's just like when you've gone somewhere when it was like the heyday, and I'm sure people who went there in the 70s would be like, are you kidding? 1986, it was already over. but for me, it was magical. It was just like, it was just heaven. And so we rented an apartment, stayed there for a month. I remember the rent was $800 and we split it. And then I went on a program in Kalymnos after that. And I was there for about 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
How incredible at that age to travel like that too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. So when you got back and you knew you wanted to make travel your life, what was sort of your next move or thought?
You know, I think like it just was because I was teaching piano, I had this like income, but nobody took piano lessons in the summer. So I had this job that supported me all year except for in the summertime. So it was like this kind of perfect thing. I would go to school, I'd work, and then I would go see friends who I'd made that lived in Florence, and I'd spend like most of July or August with them, and then I'd travel from there.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah. But there's still, like, I think about it that I went to these places over and over. Like, I've never been to so many countries. And so, like, I may have, like, a deep dive into some places, but then I feel like, how have you never been to, like, I mean, countless countries.
Right.
And continents.
Yeah.
And then I start to feel like a travel fraud.
Were you documenting any of these travels? Photography or writing or anything?
You know, I think back then I was taking pictures. I have to ask my mom because they were all print pictures where they are. But no, I really became more of a travel, like a documenter, more, I don't know, I would say like when we had our daughter, who's now 16, then I really started documenting. And I think it also was like, I was so, when you know you're in transit, you're like, oh, I'll probably move in a year. Like, you just don't want to have too many things collected. Right. So I don't think I had journals from high school, and then I started making journals when probably, I don't know, maybe when I met Matt, I started some. I would like keep all of the notes he gave me. I still have those notebooks. But then I really started like documenting place probably about 16 years ago.
Wow. And how did you end up in publishing?
So my first job, I worked in publishing. So like basically I graduated from from Berkeley in 91. I ended up with my major was comparative literature, which was related to Greece because I fell so in love with Greece that I thought I was going to move to Greece, be a teacher, and that was going to be my life.
Yeah.
And so my major was English lit, and then my minor was modern Greek. So I graduated, there were no jobs. There wasn't a job immediately in Greece. And so I started running, I had a boyfriend who owned a nightclub and in San Francisco. And so I would go there and I would do I'd come up with party ideas. So it's oddly enough, we would do VIP room parties with people like Surface Magazine, which had just started.
Right.
And it was like the Surface Magazine VIP room. And it was just a fun thing to kind of make up reasons for people to come out. I would do the invites. I would come up with the concept. And it was and then I would go out and try and get people to come. I mean, it's not that different from making a magazine. It was just like an in real life kind of event. So I was doing that, and I came to New York for I don't know, I think it was just to see friends. And I think, maybe I had broken up with my boyfriend or whatever. I just needed a break. And I went to New York, and I remember being in Agnes B in the dressing room, and some woman started talking to me, and she was like, oh, you live in California? Oh, I don't know. She asked me to coffee. And I went to coffee with her, and she was like, you're so great. You should come to this dinner party tonight. There are going to be all these girls that work at Vogue. And I remember hearing Vogue. I'm oh my God, I could meet somebody who worked at a magazine. That's crazy. I'm a girl from nowhere. So I go to this dinner, and next thing I know, they're like, you seem like you should work at a magazine. They're hiring for a position at Elle. And the next day I get a phone call on the answering machine of my friend saying hey, will you come in for an interview? And basically I went in. The interview was very oh my God, where'd you get that shirt? Where'd you get those pants? It was so ridiculous. And I got hired.
Amazing.
And so I stayed in New York and I worked at Elle for a year. And that was like in the good days when it was like, it was like the supermodel days.
Right.
This is like early 90s. And I did that for a year, making 18 grand. I've never looked better. Like, you make so little money that you eat like a half a burrito one night and the second half the next night because you're like, got to make it last.
Totally.
And so, yeah, I did that. And then after a year, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I moved back to San Francisco, ran the nightclub for a year, and then I got a job working in LA. I worked for Guess Jeans for a bit, and then I met Matt and I moved to New York for him. And I got a job at Traveler as a kind of junior photo editor.
Wow.
And that was my first like real, like the beginning of, I would say who I am in my sort of work life.
Right.
So that was that.
Wow, incredible. Was there a specific editor that ended up becoming a mentor for you?
Let's see. I mean, there were so many at Traveler. Like, it was such an amazing team. Like, this was the team that founded Traveler. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great story. It was started by Harry Evans, and he, he's the one who's married to Tina Brown, and she had come over to do Vanity Fair, and then he got hired to start Traveler. And the idea was like, at the time, there were so many of these travel magazines, or I don't know if there were so many. The story goes, because I wasn't paying attention then, that there were so many travel magazines, and he was like, they're all getting everything for free. And how can anybody trust these magazines? So we're going to start this magazine, and the tagline will be Truth in Travel, which is basically, we don't take anything for free. We don't announce who we are. We're incognito. Yeah, and that was the premise of it. And so everybody who worked there kind of like that was the whole
Wow.
the whole mantra of the place. And I loved the way they approached their visuals. It was like, well, we're going to use Helmut Newton or Philip Lorca de Corsia, or they were working with David LaChapelle and the photo director, Kathleen Kletch. She was amazing at that. Like, they were really visionary. And then I think that what happens is, like, over time, like, the whole advertising world changed.
Right.
And I think that at a certain point, the pendulum kind of swung into where the advertisers had more power than the actual magazines. And they were able to say things like, well, you need to do these kinds of stories, or we need to, basically we have to have clothing credits. We have to have cruise companies. We have to have all of this. And I think like that sort of became the way that business was done.
Right.
And so I think what, this amazing team, they were such visionaries, and I still think so highly of all of them. It's just what happens, I think, to any of us is after a certain point, like, you need new blood. And so I ended up going, I only was there for several years. And then when I left, Tom Wallace, who was the editor-in-chief at the time, he made me a contributing editor, which was like such an honor. I actually had a contract, and I felt so like special about that. And then the strange thing that basically, I don't know how many years, almost, I don't know, 18 years later, I guess, something like that, I went back and basically had to be the new blood that went in, which was really horrible to basically go into a place where you loved everybody, and yet you had to be like the agent of change. So it was like kind of your worst nightmare. Like,
right.
I love you, I totally respect you, and I have to fire you. Like, that is, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Yeah. Wow. What a tough position to be in, for sure.
It was really horrible.
Sorry, there's a few things that just popped in my head, but before I forget this, what is the difference between a photo editor or travel editor, and a contributing editor?
Okay, so a photo editor is basically the person who is meeting with photographers all the time and is then deciding when an editor, like when a travel editor, or depending on the magazine, like you have the editors who are responsible for coming up with the stories. So they come to a meeting with the photo editors and the art directors, and they say, well, I have a story about, say, Mexico City, and I want it, and the approach we're going to do is it's about the nightlife and the food scene of Mexico City. So then the art director might say, well, I'd kind of like it to look like X, Y, and Z, and then, or the creative director, the art team. And then the photo editor will say, oh, well, I just met with such and such photographer, or why don't we just use, too often it's, let's just use so-and-so because they're always good. And it's a no-brainer, and it's a known quantity,
right.
And a known entity. And that was, as a photo editor, what was so interesting to me is that because I was junior, so I would often get the nobody photographers would come in and I would meet with them because like the higher up photo editors were too busy to meet with people. So I was like, well, I'll meet with them and they'd send their portfolios in at great expense. I mean, imagine like how much it cost to send like several pound, maybe, I don't know, they were probably at least 10, maybe 15-pound portfolios.
Yeah, I remember those things.
Yeah, and send them via FedEx or through a messenger. And so, like, photographers had to, like, send that to hopefully get you to even look at it. Many times, nobody would even look at them. I felt so badly for everybody. So people would come in and talk about where they went, and often I'd be like, wait, this picture of this place, oh, it just opened? I should tell my editor. And I would tell the editor, and they're like, yeah, well, that's a photographer, and like, we're the editors, and we're the ones who come up with the ideas. And I was like, but like, you're getting your ideas from like a PR company who's getting paid by people to tell us what to do. And like, this person really was there. And they have good taste, I can tell.
Yeah.
And so, like, from that moment, I just started to see, like, there's something wrong with this model. Like, there are people who are already out there in the world traveling, and they have great taste, and they actually went there. And yet, we at the magazine are getting our information from many writers were going out and doing things, but you had to pay for them to go out. So it was like this, let's spend money to send people somewhere so they can come back and tell us what's happening in the world. And we all, I mean, if I were to say to you, like, I need you to go to Kansas City, like the first thing you would do is be like, well, I better find some people who are locals and really dig deep. And it's much easier today to do that because you can like look at hashtags and
right.
find like the coolest retail store there and bar and whatever. And yes, I know writers did that back then, but it's like you're an Insta expert because you go somewhere for 5 days. Like, how about the person who already went there and found it and used what they found?
Right.
So it was, I started to see that back then, and nobody really wanted to hear from me. Occasionally I was able to slip stories in. That's how I became a contributing editor. So to answer that part of it, a contributing editor is somebody who works on the outside and maybe they get a contract. Today, nobody has contracts really because there's no more money in publishing. Right. But back then, there were often fat contracts. And today, I would say contributing editor probably makes like just they get paid for what they do.
Gotcha.
If they get paid.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then, so at some point, you were the creative director, correct?
So I left Conde Naste Traveler. I went to go be a photo agent for like 2 years, and I was terrible at it. But I learned a lot. It was a good try to leave publishing. And then I came back and I worked at W. And I loved working at W. I worked with a great creative director, Dennis Friedman. And then I ran into a friend who had gone to college with, and she was brought in to develop the idea of starting a magazine called Cookie, which was a parenting lifestyle magazine. And then it got approved, got funding, and I went with her to do that. And I said, listen, I don't want to be just a photo editor. Like, I'm kind of tired of being locked into that. Like, I really want to write about travel. And this is a parenting magazine. So why don't we like make it so I can travel with my kid? That will be our version of Truth and Travel. Mm-hmm. And so it was like the sweetest gig ever, like traveling with my kid. Wow. And yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. So Cookie lasted just under 5 years, and then Conde folded it in 2009. It was like that year they closed Gourmet the same day they closed Cookie. Oh, right. And it was sad to lose Cookie, but it is a national tragedy for people who love magazines. Oh, yeah. That they closed Gourmet. I still can't believe it. Yeah. Like, only one of the most beautiful magazines of all time.
It was absolutely incredible.
And so they closed Cookie, Gourmet, several bridal magazines, but earlier that year they closed Domino, which was another one.
Right, that was a huge one too.
Huge. But this is what happens when people hire consultants like McKinsey. So they come in and they just basically decide like, well, it's under 5 years, take it as a loss, cut it, instead of building the brands.
Right. They're looking at it from the accounting side rather than the growth or creative side.
Exactly.
Or what people are actually excited about.
So then Pilar and I, just to give you the full resume, Pilar and I then we did some consulting, not McKinsey style, creative consulting, right. But we did some of that, and then we launched a kind of mom site called Mom Filter. But we launched that, and literally the day that it went live, we started at Martha Stewart. And at Martha, Pilar was the editor-in-chief and I was the executive editor, and we did that for several years until we went to Traveler. So we went to Traveler in 2013 and took that on. And
yeah. I remember a distinct moment when you guys started up that version of Traveler, because it changed dramatically. Like, I just remember the fonts on the cover felt like old school European or Deco, and just like there was something exciting. There was a vibrance to what was going on. And
yeah. I mean, it was really tough because we had been at Martha. We couldn't bring anybody from our team because we'd signed some kind of non-solicit. So it was like super tough to like go into a place where there was so much, it's just super awkward to go in and have to create a new team and find new people. And it was intense. And to work with Anna Wintour on a weekly basis, and it was
that
intense.
Sounds intense. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to switch gears a little bit here because one of the things that I admire about what you were doing at Conde Naste Traveler, and then I feel like are even allowed to explore more so in your own magazine, Yolo, is like you just have an incredible aesthetic and taste level. And I would just love to dive into what do you think makes a great travel story, or what do you look for in a good piece? Well,
I feel like what I'm looking for today is kind of this. I think I'm pretty consistent. One of the things that was hard for me at Traveler is that model, and I feel like I love all the editors I've gotten to work with, but like we would butt heads a lot. Mm-hmm. Pilar and I didn't butt heads. I think we're very much on the same page. But the editors that worked at the magazines would always be like fighting for their words, and I completely get it. The words are important. Mm-hmm. But I always felt like if people want words, there are other places they're going to get, like, how many words do they want?
Right. That's a great question.
Can we like sort of figure out, like, maybe they're going to other places to get long reads than this, and really, what do they want from travel? Like, I think people want to kind of fall in love with visuals, and then how do we really move in the world, throughout the world. I feel like if somebody tells me like, well, you should go eat at this restaurant, and this is what's so magical about social media. It's like everybody's like, I can't believe you've never been to Justa. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't. I just am never on the West Side. And anytime I am, I just go to Jelena. And I know like that's like embarrassing maybe or whatever. I haven't done my due diligence, but I'm not a food writer. But anyway, I went there and then everyone's like, now you have to go to Mountain or MTN, however you say it. And so of course I go, but like, I think that that's like how people move through the world. Like you take a suggestion from somebody. If you say, you know, there is this place I found when I was in Milan and like, I just found it because I walked past it and then we were starving. So we kind of had nothing to lose. We couldn't like wait to go to the place that was on our list. And this place was actually better than anything I've ever been to. Like that's the kind of intel that we all want. We want like, we kind of all wish that we had the time to be the people who could just like wander around and try things. But it's like financially and time-wise very prohibitive to constantly be in discovery mode. So I think we are in discovery mode through other people's discoveries. So like we're always looking for other curators to do it for us. And then maybe we find accidentally someplace nobody, just on our own, and then we tell people about it, and then you become the curator.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and speaking of that, how do you think about curating a sequence of images when you're going to do a layout, maybe even from back down in the Traveler days or now?
I mean, I always feel like I know that we need to have like something. You always need some kind of an establishing shot, and you need some kind of like, well, this is that Traveler, establishing shots, something that's emotional. What started to get so annoying was like the formula of like, and now here's the close-up, and there's what the food looks like, and here's happy people, and here's like, you know, making the bed so you can see what the room looks like. And it's like, well, when you get into that formula, you're not actually embracing what it feels like to be there. And I think that that's the difference with what I was trying to do with this first issue of Yolo, was get at like the feeling. And I would say like the place you see that the most is in a story I did with this guy, Scott Rudin, who had come in to see me when I was at Traveler. And he's like a guy who, his real day job is he works at Ralph, and he's like a big deal there. And
wow.
He's amazing. But he likes to shoot film on his holiday, and he's like obsessed with this kind of, he has like this nostalgic for the good old Mediterranean days vibe to his work.
Love that.
So I ran this story on Ischia, and nowhere in there was there a food shot or a overview of the island, or it was just like pictures of people on beaches and I don't know, some umbrellas.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite stories, and it actually doesn't have... There's no restaurant recommendation, there's no where to stay, there's nothing, and people like it. And I'm like, that's great, people like it. And nobody said, well, where was the hotel rack, where's the, you know. And to be fair, in the back of the book I do a kind of hotel intel section, but like people don't need to see on the page like what to do, what, you know, where to shop, what beaches to hit. Like they kind of just want to fall in love with the idea of going there. And then there are many, many people that they can get their information on Ischia from besides me.
Right.
Like I am not a one-stop shop. Like Yolo should like make you excited, and it should be something that you like, but there are plenty of amazing people, publications, books, sites, and I know that everybody out there can find those things.
Yeah.
So I'm not pretending to be the be all end all.
Right. I love your approach with that, because I do feel like it brings a little bit of the romance back to travel rather than just a checklist of things to hit.
Right.
And allows for maybe some room for
Right.
somebody to discover a place on their own.
Well, think about like retail, and as retail has had to really completely figure out like, well, what do we do now that people can know I like to get these clothes, I like this designer, I know how this designer fits me, so I'm just going to get everything delivered to my house. So retail's had to reinvent itself, and it's like, you know, we could take Sid and Ann. It's like you want to go to their store because you know there will be something there that you didn't know about before.
Right.
And so you're like, oh, well, I wouldn't have ever had that discovery of those like beautiful beaded belts had I just like, I wouldn't ever be in a site and be like, beaded belt and search for it, and then the team that works there. And I think that when you think about all these kind of concept stores, which become, you know, stores are editors as well, and they're curating this kind of experience for you. So you go in and it's like almost every store now has like the long kind of farm table in the front that's got a candle and some jewelry and some books and some magazines and hopefully a Yolo Journal, and you know, but like it's this kind of curatorial experience that you go into, and you know that if you talk to the shop owner and say like, hey, where's a good coffee around here, they're going to have a good recommendation. So it's almost like stores are the editors now.
That's a really cool way to look at that. I've not thought about that. Yeah, that's interesting.
I feel like sometimes I go into stores and I feel badly because I'm like, okay, I'm just visiting. I want that book, but I'm not going to schlep it because I just don't have the room in my luggage. And so I find things, and so I try, if there's a store that I don't shop in because I don't have the space, I make sure I Instagram them. So hopefully at least I'm like letting people know like, I love this place.
Yeah. I actually found one of my favorite photographers through one of the articles you did on Venice, and finding his work has completely changed my personal
Renato.
work. How'd you know? Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's
I saw it
amazing.
and I was like, oh my God, this guy's doing exactly what I wish that I was trying to do, and I didn't quite understand what I was looking for. And then I saw his work and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah. His work is absolutely incredible. Yeah. His story, the Venice photographs you have in Yolo are just incredible.
He's so great. I think we're going to do a story with him in the next issue on Shanghai.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And what I love about his work is like, it's not a story about Shanghai. It's just more pictures from Renato that like people should just see.
Yeah.
They need to live in print.
Yeah. For those listening, his name is Renato D'Agostin. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. I'll throw a link in there as well. But yeah, his work is incredible. He shoots just on film for the most part, I believe. Yeah.
And he prints everything on his own. He got his start working for Ralph Gibson.
Yeah.
And he's like a
hero of mine.
masterful, he started as a printer and he's masterful at that.
Yeah, it's truly.
And one of the kindest people ever. So.
Oh, good to know. Yeah, I missed him when I overlapped him a bit in New York, but didn't ever get a chance to meet him. So now he's in Venice, I think, right?
Yeah.
So when you were first starting Yolo, did you have a kind of manifesto for it? Did you know what you wanted to do with it?
No, I would say it was one of those things where, I mean, I don't know. I could say no, but it's a little bit like everything I've worked on my whole life sort of goes into it. So it's just like, I don't know. It's this thing that's everything I believe in. It's like about giving somebody who's, you know, by somebody would say giving somebody who's a nobody, but they're not a nobody. They just haven't been recognized. Like, I like the idea of taking people who are not writers and interviewing them and saying like, I want that to be in Yolo. So my friend Alex Postman, who helped me at the 11th hour, copy edit everything because I was like, oh my God, I need another set of eyes on this. So she and I were joking. She was like, you have so many people in here who English is their second language, and I don't want to lose that kind of like Italianness of them.
Sure.
But we also need to make it so it's it's readable.
Yeah.
So we called it the ESL issue, but it really was like, I want there to be things where it's like I meet a really cool winemaker from the Abruzzo who her name is Chiara, and she wrote this piece. She called it like the Grand Food Tour. And I met her and I was like, Chiara, you're so into food and you're so into travel, and I bet you've got like the best kind of non-Michelin star kind of restaurants to recommend. And she was like, yes, we'll do it about the terraces, the best terraces to eat at in Italy. And it was so fun to do that with her. And like, how would she ever have an opportunity to write for like a US publication? She's not a writer, she's a winemaker.
Yeah.
And to be able to have something where people who don't have a platform then have a platform, like, I don't know, I feel like it's important. It's important to give people that chance. Like, people gave me chances, I like to give people chances. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
No, it's great. I mean, I love how alive it feels. That's what I think is so unique about Yolo, and that I think people are really responding to, is it kind of has a rawness to it and an energy that is like, it just leaps off the page. Like, I remember flipping through each page the first time I got it, and I like made a ceremony of it. I made a Negroni.
I love it.
Sat down and was like, oh my God, just savoring every page.
Oh, yeah. That's so nice. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful work. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about your personal aesthetic. You have amazing taste. You have a very almost curated life. Is that fair to say? And is that something that you think about, like the house in France and the way you travel and where you travel? Were those all conscious decisions, or did it just emerge out of your interests?
I mean, I would say, I don't know. There's a part of me that's like, I used to, like when I was the high school kid, I sort of found my way of like identifying who I was by like, well, I'm going to dress a certain way. And then once I made enough money, I got out of just Salvation Army kind of style. And I remember I went to Macy's and I bought a pair of Biblos pants super on sale and a Ralph Lauren silk shirt. It was like nice. The sort of first kind of like designer stuff I had. And then when I was running the nightclub and had the nightclub boyfriend, I was like convincing him to buy me like Jean-Paul Gaultier and Yoji, and I was like super into that.
Sure.
And I would say now I'm like more like I have a uniform. I try to like find ways that I find things that I don't have to think about what I'm going to wear. It's just like the pair of blue jeans that is super comfortable and look fine.
Right.
And like, whatever, that like I have certain shoes that I never wear high heels. I'm like all about comfort, but with like a little twist. I like Venetian slippers because they, even though they have no support, I like them. But like, I think that I've curated myself down to where it's like, I don't want to have to worry or think too much about what I'm wearing. I have short hair, so I don't have to like spend time doing my hair. Mm-hmm. I don't wear makeup. So like I'm pretty like low maintenance on like the personal front. And then when I think about like what I want to focus my time on, because really all this stuff is about time and we all have the same amount of it in our day. Yeah. So I want to spend my time, like I do work a lot. Like right now I would say I'm at kind of maximum capacity because I do consulting work I do consulting work full stop. Mm-hmm. I enjoy doing it. But I do that so that I can do Yolo without there being a financial gun to my head. Right. Because I want Yolo to have this time to figure out what it is. Like people will ask me like, so what's your business model? I'm like, my business model is to make something and to see where it needs to go. Like I've like created a thing, and I believe that if you create something that's really from your heart, it will either really connect or it won't, but at least I did it. So I can say I did it.
Right.
For myself. And I tried and it didn't resonate, or I tried and it does. And so I have right now it's sort of like doing double work. until we figure out exactly where we're going with it. And I feel like on this trip, I've actually had a bit of an aha.
Oh, interesting.
I think I've got some ideas here. So, but back to the time thing, I do feel like because I'm super maxed out, what I try and do is become very I've always been very researched about my travel. So it's like Matt and Clara will always joke around with me like, oh, so we're like, you know exactly where we're going to stop along the way. And I'm like, it doesn't mean that we can't break off from that. But I feel like I want to know where we're having lunch, because otherwise, like, you can't get into that place if I didn't call ahead, or like maybe it closes at 2 and you wouldn't have stayed in that antique shop for so long if you knew you were going to miss lunch, or maybe it was worth missing lunch or whatever. So I do think like I'm very curated about how I spend my time. Right. And so like I feel like I try to just be careful about how I spend my day. And like right now here in LA, I was like, I'm just coming off of working a lot up in the Napa Valley, back-to-back meetings, like no time to do anything in my head. And so I was like, I am going to go to LA and not be overprogrammed. And that was like a very like big deal for me to say, I'm not going to try and hit these restaurants. I'm not going to like tell all my friends that I'm here. Like, right. I'm just going to be very quiet and try and relax, because I don't do that enough, and I feel like I'm gonna lose my mind.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you sitting down with me, given your
this is
your
fun.
day off.
This is fun.
Good. I'm sort of the same way, especially in Italy. I don't want to have a bad meal in Italy when you can have the best meals.
Right.
So
exactly.
Completely.
Exactly.
Do you have a favorite place? I know that's a super general question.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I do think that I'm very happy in Greece. Like, Greece is probably, sorry, Italy, but definitely sorry, Marie-Louise show from the Pelicano. I mean, I love Italy so much. And my friends there are like my favorite people. But I do love the kind of ease of, like, it's not like I love eating a meal in Greece because the food is just so perfect. It's just like, it's so easy, right. And that kind of lack of conscious, like, it's just like, of course, it's the Greek salad, it's some fish, it's tzatziki, it's this. It's like, you don't even need to look at a menu. You're just like, I don't know, kind of one of everything. You have your feet in the sand. You might go for a swim, like, right. While you're waiting for it to come. Like, the wine is cheap. You can invite as many people as you want, because, like, literally you could have, like, lunch for 18 people at, like, even a kind of hot spot, and it's like $300. Right. And you're like, how is that possible? Like, you can eat lunch for 3 people in Venice, and it's $200.
For sure.
And we had 2 beers.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, it's just, that's very easy. And I love Italy for, I mean, that for me is just so much more romantic. Like, Greece for me is about easy, casual, like, you don't think about anything. You don't care about what you wear. Italy, you feel like the best version of yourself. You dress a little bit, you stand a little taller. It's
so true.
You know, you just, I don't know. It's just, it's sexy. It's more, I don't know. I just love Italy. And somehow we ended up with this house in France. And
that seems, given the last 2 statements.
And
funny.
I mean, I would say French have charm down, and
that is
true. I love driving through France, and I think that the French, I don't know, the landscape is amazing. I don't love French food. I love oysters, but mm-hmm. I don't like a lot of the richness of the food.
Yeah. So
it is weird that we ended up there. But I do love the project that we did, and I think that we ended up with that project because it just was like, we rent in Brooklyn, we have a house in upstate, but we've had it for so long, it doesn't even feel like a new project. It's not new. It's like 15 years old.
Right.
Matt and I wanted a project, and we could afford to do like a tiny little house. Well, we thought we were getting one house, then we bought two. And you can buy these things and they're affordable. And we thought that it was also good timing because Mimi was doing her workshops there, and then you have these, and that's Mimi Thorson of Manger, which is how we met.
Yes.
And then you have the TGV that is going to Bordeaux.
Right.
And so it is, I think it's an interesting area, and it feels a little bit like Cotton Time, and I'm a sucker for anything that's Cotton Time.
Yeah.
It's like, that's,
Yeah, it seems like, again, one of those areas there's all these other gorgeous crumbly buildings around,
Yeah.
but if you can live in that
Yeah.
place, it's gorgeous,
Yeah.
super romantic. The food is super local. The wine is
Right.
fantastic. It's Bordeaux.
Yeah. And it is a little bit easier, I think, than Italy, where it's just a little bit more close to our culture. It's not as Wild West as I think Italy can be.
Yeah, for sure. There's an outside chance I can get dual citizenship in Italy, which I'm now investigating, and so I'm like,
Matt's on that too.
oh, nice.
He really,
yeah. There's a lot of steps and a lot of paperwork, but yeah, sort of debating. Yeah, similar thing. We'd like to get just some crumbly little thing somewhere. It's
Yeah.
it's my old man job.
Abruzzo's pretty magical.
Sort of
and
looking
has,
at that, yeah.
Has that, yeah. And it's 2 hours from Rome.
Right.
So
Which I love and fly right into, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible. Is there any place that you haven't been that's on your immediate wish list?
I really want to go to Transylvania.
Oh, wow.
I just think it's really like one of those places. Like, we did a story on it in Traveler, and a friend of mine who I used to work with ages ago at W, and he was an editor who then became a photographer, and now he like writes and shoots his own pieces. His name is Chris Bagley, and he's so talented. And he had gone to Transylvania, and I'd kind of sniffed it out. I knew like Prince Charles and like a bunch of those kind of people who are into super organic food and like preserving culture, had been doing some work down there. Cool. And then Chris came back and was like, it's amazing, we should do a story. And then Chris had just been there as a writer. And so we sent a photographer there, and the images were so great. And
Nice.
then I started following somebody on Instagram who had all these amazing linens from there. And then like Amanda Brooks, like, you just start to see like Amanda went there and she got amazing stuff. And I'm like, must get to Transylvania.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this one photographer, God, I'm going to butcher her name. It's
Lavinia
Yes,
Chernow.
Lavinia.
Yes.
She's incredible. I love her work. Yeah.
Yeah. She's got a story in the next issue.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. She's always super generous with commenting on my stuff. Yeah, she's great. I love her work.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Instagram and digital? Do you still find it inspiring? Do you still look to Instagram, or is it sort of a necessary
I
evil?
do. I still really like Instagram. I think that I think it's interesting. I feel like a lot of people are so annoyed by the idea of the influencer. And I think like if we could visualize the Google image of what the influencer looks like in our head, it's probably we all have the same one, and it's like, somebody who's showing a lot of leg, and maybe it's the back of them, and it's a hat, and it's a gesture, and it's a very contrived thing, like, look at me in this place. Yeah. And I think though that there are so many that, like, essentially the influencer that we like to follow, those people are kind of like the new editors. And I think like there are plenty of these editors out there that many of them have become influencers in their own right. Like, take Adam Rappaport. Like, Adam has always been an influencer, but you wouldn't have called him that. You would have said, he's that cool guy who's a GQ editor.
Right.
And then he became the cool guy who is the Bone app editor. And then he's very clever on his Instagram, so he's also become technically an Instagram influencer, but he's always been one. Yeah. And I think like that's the thing, is like we have this word now that annoys all of us that we use, but But what is an editor-in-chief if not the ultimate influencer?
Totally.
So,
It's very true. It's just a different platform.
It's just a different,
That's a great way to look at it. I love that frame.
So I like looking at Instagram because I think even when people have to support themselves, and I'm happy that they're supporting themselves from doing these like hashtag ads and whatever. I think it's fantastic that Jenny Walton, who I think is an amazing Instagrammer, and I love following her. Like, I love to see the joy she has from going to a fashion show because she's not a jaded fashion editor, and she's like so giddy. It's like so palpable. You're like, I'm so happy that you are at the Marc Jacobs show, and you're crying with like excitement. Like, that's so cool. Like, we all need to find people who are so enthusiastic about the world and bring that kind of joyfulness and giddiness to us, because I think it's I don't know, finding the right people to follow, mute the people who irritate you. I made the mistake of unfollowing people, not realizing there was like a mute potential.
Right.
So sorry if I unfollowed you. It was,
I love that. Mute potential.
But I get inspired by it. I feel like if somebody comments something on somebody's and it's clever, like I start going down their rabbit hole, and like it's just cool to find people that you never would know ever.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, no, it's great. It is, I suppose, that double-edged sword in some ways. I feel like it ruins the romance, but I would have never found the places that I love today without it. So, yeah.
In fact, there was a woman who came last night to the event named Elizabeth, and she reached out to me on Instagram and said, "Oh, I did this whole project in Brazil about Niemeyer," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I've seen a lot of Niemeyer. Like, whatever. I've been around, and we used to work a lot with wallpaper, and Niemeyer's amazing, not to discount that, but that's great. So whatever, I'll be polite though. Send me what you've got." And she sends me these images, and I've never seen these Niemeyer buildings before.
Wow.
And they were so great. And she was like, "Yeah, I found them because somebody on Instagram, and like then I was there, and somebody through WhatsApp was directing me, and it was a guy who works for Niemeyer, blah blah blah." And I'm like, this is so great. And what's even better is your story about how you found it. So we're going to put it in the next issue of Yolo.
Oh, incredible.
Because it's really about, it's it's about Niemeyer and these beautiful images, but it's also about like connections.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Is Yolo going to follow the format of an entire region or country like the first one?
No, so I've kind of struggled with the idea of like, how do I like I'm making it up as I go along, which is hopefully what makes people make it like it feels alive, because it's really alive. But I think that Holiday Magazine is so lovely, and I know it's definitely more fashion than it is travel, but it definitely is it's by the region or location. And I just feel like I don't know that I have enough bandwidth to like identify, okay, so my next one's going to be France, and that I could probably do about 5 places and feel like I could do them well. Mm-hmm. But then I would start to feel like a real fraud after about 5.
Right.
And I want to create something that has more legs than that.
Yeah.
So I think that but like I'll do summer issues that are targeted, because I also think like,
oh, I love that.
So I will do the next summer issue will be Greece, and should come out, like I'm going to also get better about my scheduling, mm-hmm. because I will have more time, and I'm trying to be a little bit better at all of that, because Yolo came together in a very last minute sort of way.
Yeah.
So I want to have that come out in like mid-May, so people can have it in their mailboxes before they go away. And I feel like I know Greece really well, and I could do a France one. But I also want to hear from people who've been all over the world. And if I'm like, sorry, I'm only doing a Greece issue, and that means you can't be in it ever.
Right.
Like, because you went to Uzbekistan. And it's cool, and I love your pictures, but I can't run it because I'm not going to do an Uzbekistan issue.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to alienate great content because of a geographical constraint.
Right, totally. With all the oversaturation of photography, what do you feel like stands out to you these days within photo?
I feel like I definitely love film or people who shoot things that feel like film and it feels like more emotional. Like, I think I really like, it should feel more like a snapshot or like a moment, or I just am always drawn to like the moment. Like, it's like, I love your imagery. I think that when you kind of get somebody who's like in a station or like, those things really speak to me. It's so interesting to me, like, that I can be like so in love with your pictures. I think they need to be bigger, because I think that when people see them on Instagram, they're too small, and they're not like, I see things small, and I'm able, because this is my job, I'm able to see them like for what they are. Like, I'm not just going to breeze by it. But I feel like it's so interesting how on Instagram, there's like what's going to get like a ton of likes, and then what's going to bomb. And it's weird to me that like the ones that are actually the strongest, like Renato has like a very low following, but it's because his work is too good to be in that small screen. So it's funny
It is funny. The format changes things, because you're absolutely right. Like, I know which images of mine will do better if it's a close-up or a detail or like a rustic chair. It does way better than the picture that I am emotionally attached to that would look better as a print.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So you need to do a show.
I've been thinking about it. So yeah.
You should.
Yeah, that's
actually,
definitely something I want to do.
That reminds me of something. So there's so many people wanted to buy the cover of Yolo, like to have that image like in their home. And so I have this friend, Russell, who has something called Sonic Editions. And Sonic is basically like he works with all these different archives. I mean, like, amazing archives.
Yeah.
From, Gamma and Paris. Like, he's got like great stuff. We met him because Matt got a Hemingway photo from him that was like Hemingway making a Negroni. And so we have that in our house.
You have to have that.
Yeah. And I think it was something like framed, maybe it was like $250. So it's like something that is so original, and I'm sure
Incredible.
I was talking to Russell, and I said, I just feel like there's so much work out there that I believe I would like to do like a kind of a YOLO collection of images that I think maybe you'll never even see them in the magazine because they're one-offs. They're just special moments. But I've seen them and I like them and I want them to live somewhere. And many people who are great photographers don't have a gallery, and that's just like a hobby of theirs. So like, we should do one of yours in there.
I would love that.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, because it's fun. It's fun to like have these other sort of things that we dabble in.
Yeah, absolutely. And bringing the concept of print to life. Like, seeing a print is just
right.
A good print is
right.
Incredible.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think we've kind of covered some pretty serious ground.
Cool.
You feel like anything else you want to cover? Anything next? I know Matt posted something the other day about a line of bags that you guys are collaborating. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like, we're just, I don't know, like in this trying to figure out, like, I would say we like to do collaborations because it's fun to work with people. I don't think we're doing collaborations like because we see them as this huge, it's not like the big revenue model.
Right.
But it is fun to like talk to people who are bag designers. Like, we're doing something with J.W. Holm, and they were like, let's do just like a little kind of holiday collab with you guys where you edit our line and kind of come in with like different colorways, and like we're going to do, Matt will call it to his followers a Negroni tote, and I'll call it the wine tote. Very nice. Or the champagne tote.
Even better.
Whatever. Sure. But there's like probably 10 pieces in the collection, and it's just fun. It'll come out, I think, in October, I guess. Something like that. But my friends at Apollos, they asked me to do
I love their
a
stuff.
little bag line, and it really is just for fun. It's not that's like, I like those guys. It's fun to do something. It's really in like the dabbling stages.
Yeah. Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
And I guess just the last question: when are you hitting the road again, or hitting Europe or elsewhere?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think I really loved spending the whole summer away, and then I think the hard part about when you're traveling that much is you feel like you're the most alive when you're traveling, and I think it's super important to figure out how to keep that energy when you're in your like, whatever, it's all your real life,
right?
But in your daily grind life, in your like where home really is, like where your real laundry machine is, where you're not packing to go to that place.
Yeah.
I think like there's like the kind of good and bad part of Instagram is like, well, it makes you look for beauty. It makes you think about like, oh, I want to do a post about something. Oh, I haven't done a post in a while. Oh, I should share. Oh, like, right, I got to continue building this so-called brand or whatever. But then it also is like, well, what about like your life just where you are is also beautiful. And
right.
It's also okay to just like, I don't know, like there's that social anxiety around, oh, do people only like me when I'm in Europe? Like, I don't know. I don't really think that they dig me in California as much as they do in Europe. So maybe I should just go to Europe. And it's like, what? This cannot be that I'm living my life
right.
for Instagram. Like, it's so wrong. So I think it is an important thing to just be mindful of that. Like, what is your real life? This so-called like weird platform that we all benefit from, but like, don't let it rule you.
Right. Yeah, that's a great last point to end on, I think. Well, I really appreciate you doing this with me. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm so glad we made it happen, Todd.
Me too. Thanks so much.
Cool. Thanks.